Okay, so earlier this year I rode my Tenere in the sea in Denmark. Not a good idea. So what ended up happening is I tried to take the headers off, and the bolts were pretty much solidly rusted in place. I ended up trying to weld it with a washer and a nut, various techniques, nothing worked. Ended up grinding it off, tried tapping it, broke some taps off in the engine block. And one of them I completely buggered up, actually tore, there we go, tore a piece of the engine off. Tried to weld it again, tried to drill it out again, it didn't go. One of them is fine, but so now I've decided to drop the engine so I can properly tackle the cylinder head, drill everything, weld everything back together. So this is going to be a little video about how you take the engine out and hopefully repair the headers. And yeah, excuse the bad quality, I'm holding a little GoPro session in my hand, so it's not very high quality video, excuse that. But yeah, here we go. So I've already removed the radiator and the header pipes and the mid pipe and the muffler. Disconnect the battery because I did some welding. So the next step is obviously to remove the tank, then the fairing or the crash bars, and all the electronics, probably these mounts as well. I'll have to see, I'm not exactly sure. I'm guessing these struts will have to go as well. And then it's a simple matter of dropping it out. We'll see. It should be possible to remove this by pressing, I'm assuming. It seems a bit tricky. Yeah, so that did the trick. This slides over the petcock, the plastic piece, and the tank. Slide it up, firmly press it on both sides and pull it out after obviously disconnecting the electronics and the bleeder hose. She's nice and clean. Not. Alright, so the next steps, I reckon I'll remove the crash bars and everything that goes with it, and then we'll take it one small step at a time. Alright, so I decided to leave the top crash bars in place and only remove the bottom ones. Now all that's left is this bottom engine frame type thing, stud, and after that I'm guessing this bolt will have to be removed on both sides. This bolt here, and likely some bolts in here as well, after of course disconnecting it from the air intake. And of course all the hoses and electronics has to be removed as well. Next step is then obviously to support the block and loosen all the bolts. There we go, all loose. I eventually had to disconnect the top of the air intake from the airbox, so the airbox stays intact. And pretty much just drops out. I'll probably have to disconnect a couple more cables and tubes. So there we go, just the skeleton and where the heart bypass surgery will take place. So here you can clearly see all the damage I've done trying to remove the bolts. This one is broken out completely, trying to force a too large tap in here. My fault, obviously. Well, everything here is my fault. This one I've managed to drill out, so that's basically fine. Just off center, so I might have to do something there. This one is a bit stuffed. It's got a left-handed tap or screw removal tool buried in there, so that's going to take some drilling with tungsten carbide, I think. Will hopefully do it. This one is should be easier to remove. So the next step will be to remove the valve cover, cylinder head, and then fix it all. I see it's running pretty rich. It's a bit dirty. I have to look into this a little bit, do some tuning. And obviously, while I've got the valve cover off, I might as well inspect the valve clearance and all those lovely things. Alrighty. So these spark plug connectors simply twist out. And voila! So next, as I removed one of the valve covers, I dropped a shim right into the engine here, and I heard it go clink clink cling all the way in. I have no idea where it is. I'm afraid I'll probably have to remove everything and to find that little shim now. It's never a dull moment, so be really careful when removing the valve covers so you don't drop a shim. So they're all loose, but I'm leaving them in place because there's a little washer down the bottom, and I still have PTSD of losing the shim in the center. So I'm going to leave the bolts in place, remove these. What I'm going to do is I've loosened this bolt that keeps the chain from falling into the engine. So what I'll do is I'll lift the head off and give me enough room to get underneath, remove the pin and keep the chain from falling in all in one go. So that's the theory. Work on it. Yeah. And then go hunting for the shim. I ended up having to drain the oil and flip the engine on its back, remove the sump cover, and there she is, the little shim that ran away. And if I remember correctly, this was front left. Yep. That's where she belongs. Happy days. And now put everything back together, and next step would be to start working on this, do some welding, do some drilling stuffs, many stuffs. So now comes the fun part of drilling out the taps, the broken off taps, and the rest of the holes, and just the bolts that's still stuck in there. Some of these I've drilled skew, so I'll have to most probably fill in the holes with aluminium with my little TIG welder. Probably cut down both sides or one side or something and then try to fill it up. This I've screwed up royally as well with drill slipping, so I tried different drill bits, high-speed steel, titanium, cobalt. None of them would even scratch the broken off tap. And then I found this tungsten carbide, I think. It's fairly hard. This seems to do the trick. So it's at least scratching the broken off tap in there. So with a little bit more drilling, I might be able to enlarge in this hole and then fill it up again with some aluminium and then tap the holes again. It ain't pretty, but I reckon she'll work eventually. The state of the nation, everything is drilled out. Some slightly larger, but I'll try and put a coil in this one at least, because it was drilled slightly off center and I had to drill it larger, but a coil should just work. This one got the last bit of thread or the bolt out of it. Nice. Very risky. It's millimeters away from a oil drainage hole. The rest of them are quite far away from drainage holes, but this one is millimeters away, just there. So I reckon I'll try and weld this, clean it all up, weld this hole, try and fill it up a bit, and put a coil in there, tap these, and we should be good if I can manage to weld this. So now the real fun, to try and weld this hole shut. We'll see how it goes. So that's the weld. It's not the prettiest, but I can drill that again and tap it, so it should be fine. I might redo this. We'll see. I still need to do this one. So let's get to this one. Well, there she is. I'll weld it up, grind it down, and new holes tapped. This time I have much more. But of course, when you mount the cylinder head, there's going to be, so this is the intake camshaft. If you mount it in this position, where number one cylinder is on the compression stroke, that's the correct position more or less. You'll see that there's no pressure on number one cylinder, but on the number two cylinder the intake valves are completely open. That's because it's on its downward intake stroke. When you assemble this again, this is obviously not a good way to assemble it because there's pressure on these valves, so you won't be able to put the caps back on. What you can do then is put it on its, there's another position where there's very little pressure, and that's where the lobes point slightly down and inwards, and it'll line up with the intake on this side, and the exhaust will have a similar position where the lobes will be pointing inwards as well. That's just an easier way to mount it. Obviously, if you crank the engine again, it'll reposition itself on the same kind of stroke configuration where the lobes point outwards. But just to mount it again, this is the correct way to mount it, and make sure that the mark lines up there before you do. So when removing the cylinder head, it's always a good idea to replace the gaskets. So the first step would be to nicely clean the mating surfaces. So I did this with a little metal scraper, carefully and slowly just remove most of the dirt. It doesn't need to be spotless, but it does need to be smooth and dry. So obviously remove the dowel pins as well and save them. These will be required later for proper alignment. And then what I also like to do is just spray a little bit of carb cleaner on top of this, to remove most of the oil. We'll do the same on this side. So remove this. I've already scraped it a little bit. That feels smooth enough. Most of the material, previous adhesive has been removed. So after that, I'll apply a little bit of gasket sealant on the surface itself, or maybe on the swanky new gasket, just a little bit, not too much, and that will ensure a nice seal. So that's it, just a very, very thin layer all around the surface, and we'll put the gasket on top of it now. So just on the cylinder itself, same thing, very light layer on all the mating surfaces, including the cylinder sleeves themselves. So this one has been installed, and now we'll do the head. Now we'll torque it down to spec. So the service manual isn't exactly clear on how to torque these bolts. There's 3 values in there. So I think I've figured it out. You have to do it in 3 stages. So first you tighten it to 10 Newton meters crisscross. Then you tighten it to 40 Newton meters crisscross. Then you loosen all of them and retighten to 20 Newton meters. I'm not sure why it has to be tightened twice as tight as it ends up being tightened, but that's apparently what we have to do. It's maybe to make sure it seats properly. I don't know. So now that the 6 main bolts have been tightened to 20 Newton meters, we'll tighten these 3 on the side to 10 Newton meters as well. So when you reassemble, start with the exhaust camshaft. There's a little mark on the right hand side which should be, when it's pressed down further, when it's tight, it should be just in line with the top of the cylinder head, and you'll see that the lobes are now pointing inwards, which means that piston 1 is not on the top of the compression stroke, but it's on top of the exhaust stroke, because it's just finished counterclockwise closing the exhaust valve. So this is the way we'll assemble it, and then we'll turn it 270 degrees later on, so the lobes are on piston 1 is pointing outwards, and then we'll do our measurements for the valve clearance. So we've installed the exhaust camshaft with the lobes pointing inwards, and this little mark aligned with the top of the case. Torqued it all down, so now make sure that it's tight in this direction before you torque it down. Then install the intake camshaft with the lobes pointing in the same inward direction, and that little intake mark also aligned, and make sure this is tight. It's important that at this stage the tensioner is outside. There's no tension on the chain yet, which we'll come to in a second. What we'll do next is zip tie this. The reason being, when you tighten this down and you put tension on the chain, this will want to jump. So in order to prevent that, we'll just tighten it down with a zip tie, and we'll carefully snip it off later. The shafts are in the correct position. This is tight. This will be tight as soon as we put pressure on this. So the next step is to install the tensioner. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert a number 3 Allen key, turn anti-clockwise until it can go no further. Be careful not to let it go, because it will snap out. Alright, it's firmly seated. Make sure this little tab is facing upwards when you reinstall it. So we're going to insert the bolts and install it back into the engine now. And be very careful not, while you're installing it, try not to touch this Allen key in the middle, because it will snap into the chain, which is probably not very good for the chain. Now we're going to turn it clockwise to slowly add pressure to the chain. Can't go anymore, so we can pull it out. There we go. Pressure is on the chain. We still have the zip tie, which we'll remove in a moment, but I just want to verify that we can in fact crank the engine. Yep, everything is moving smoothly. It's good. Now just snip off the little zip tie. Carefully while you're snipping it, so you don't lose it inside the engine. Bob's your uncle. So now, obviously in this position with the mark inside there, this piston number 1 is at top dead center, but it's on the exhaust stroke because the lobes are facing inwards, remember? So as this is on the exhaust stroke, we want to measure it when it's on the compression stroke. So we're going to turn it 270 degrees. That's 90. Right, let me put this here. It's another 90. And that should be more or less the upward compression stroke. And the lobes are facing upwards. Installing the last gasket, the head cover gasket. We'll just take off the old one. There's no need to add any gasket sealer. This one is a nice flexible rubber gasket. Be sure to, there's a little pin, if you can see that. Make sure that pin is facing towards the cover. So eventually it'll be upwards. So I ended up applying light dabs of gasket sealer just here and there, so that this will be seated properly, and when turned upside down it's not going to fall out, because it really has to align everywhere, especially with the spark plug sleeves. If that doesn't line up properly, it all goes wrong. So the other way, you can just turn it upside down, or turn it on its back and lie it down here before you put the cover on, but I'd opted for applying a little bit of gasket sealer. So let's see how this goes. Seems to to work fine. Nothing's protruding. It all seems to line up. I can see the gasket. Yeah. So there we go. That's one cylinder head repair done. And everything assembled back. So the next step obviously is to insert it into the horse again. Alright, here we go. She's all mounted. All the bolts are back in. And she sits, the crash bars are back, the frame is back. Now we have to connect everything back up again, all the electrics, clutch cables, radiator still goes to go back in, everything else needs to be connected. I still need to insert the new header bolts. So yeah, this is where we're at. Alright, it's the moment of truth. The new header pipes have been installed, everything has been mounted back, hopefully the way it's supposed to go. So I've got this high tailpipe, tiny little muffler. I made this little bracket, but it's a little short, so I'll have to fix, I'll have to weld something here, make a longer bracket so I can properly secure the muffler. But now we'll see if I screwed anything up. So the entire point of this exercise was to replace the muffler with something that's on a high mount, because the original, the stock muffler sits down here and fallen over a couple of times and it completely ruined the swing arm. I'll fix this and spray it later. So this one is nice and tidy, it sits up high. The only thing is the original bracket I've grinded down, so I need to make another bracket to fasten it. So I've built this little thing. It's a piece of art in itself, all kinds of weird angles, and the idea is that it would sit up here nicely out of sight, kind of trimmed down, flowing with the lines, and be very unobtrusive. And we'll see this later when it's all mounted up. The other thing is that the header pipes that goes with the system is a little bit more forward than the stock. So my crash bars don't fit anymore, and what I'll probably do later on is redo this part as it sits like here. So this just extends a bit more forward for now. Or alternatively, completely redo it so that it doesn't actually connect on this side, but it connects to the upper crash bars or to the mount. I'll have to see what I'll do with modifying this. That should be interesting as well. So that's the end result. quite happy with how this turned out. It's a very nice clean look. I'll have to see about clearance, but I think there's just enough clearance for the back wheel. Yeah, it should be fine, but I might later on decide to adjust it just a little bit to the right. And there's still enough space here not to interfere with the baggage. All in all, I'm calling this a win, even though it was quite a process.